Welcome, everyone. I'm excited because I'm here with Jose Gutierrez, who is the Chief Operating Officer for Westlands Water District, to talk a little bit about the allocation that we recently received. The Bureau of Reclamation every year gives Central Valley project contractors like Westlands an allocation, and this year it was 0%. And so here we're talking to Jose a little bit about what that allocation means, how we got here, and what we have in store for the future. Jose?
Thank you, Elizabeth. Pleasure to be here. Westlands received an initial allocation for ag irrigation of 0%. What that means is that for the Central Valley project water that we typically receive under better conditions, this year we will receive no water from the CVP. And in a typical year, our allocation under 100% scenario would be over 1 million acre feet. Now, on average, during the recent droughts over the last 15 years, Westlands allocation has ranged between 30 to 35%, because we did have zero allocations prior to this, which in that average allocation over the last 15 years translates to several 100,000 acre feet that our growers use to irrigate crops and help sustain farming on the west side. This year, unfortunately, because of that zero, we will receive no Central Valley project water.
Why is it zero? I hear a lot that we're relying on precipitation, and maybe that didn't materialize over these past couple of months. Can you talk a little bit about what the conditions were that drove us here?
I think a few conditions drove us here. One has to do with the last 2 months being very dry. January and February, two of the wettest months of the year. Received basically no precipitation. I'll show you some illustrations pointing that fact. So I talked about precipitation, but another variable that impacted the allocation was actually low storage levels. And this illustration shows the current storage level in Shasta Reservoir, and that's north of Redding in Northern California, and it is the largest Central Valley project or CVP reservoir in the system at 4.5 million acre feet. During the start of the water year, and you're going to hear me talk about water year and contract year, the water year runs from October 1 through the end of September of the following year. The contract year runs from March 1 through the end of February of the following year. Now, storage in Shasta was a little over 1 million acre feet at the start of the water year on October 1. It kind of bounced around at that level for a couple months, and it started to actually recover and rebound with storage following the heavy precipitation months of December and October. And we started to recover, but once January and February came, the recovery started to flatten out. It looked like we were on a trajectory similar to prior years where we could have refilled the reservoir. And this blue shade represents the average of all years. This dark blue line represents this year, and the red line and blue line represent 2015 and 2016 when we had a 0% allocation and a 5% allocation respectively. So this is Shasta Reservoir. So this is one variable. You can see it's very low compared to average. So this is one variable that Reclamation used in the calculation of this year's allocation. The other thing that they considered was the historical precipitation for this water year and a forecast of what could happen going forward. As I mentioned, October was a great month. We were far above average, represented by this blue bar here. And 2.8 inches is typical for October. November was below average. December was was above average also. Average is 10 inches for that year for the 8-station index, and we received a little over 14 inches for the 8-station index. And the 8-station index represents precipitation falling primarily in Northern California, so north of Sacramento and more north of the Delta all the way up to the Oregon border. Unfortunately, 2 of the wettest months of the year were very low, 1.3 inches in January compared to 9, and not even half an inch in February when the average is about 9 inches for that year. So very low precipitation means very low snow in the Sierra also. When you combine low reservoir levels, low precipitation, very little snow, and when you layer on the regulations that govern the operations of the State Water Project and the Central Valley Project, we anticipated a no allocation, a zero allocation, but it was still very disappointing to hear when we receive zero allocation.
You mentioned snow, and I know sometimes we have a good snowpack. We can rely on some of that runoff coming into our reservoirs. How are we doing with our snowpack?
The snowpack, similar to precipitation, started out okay. It was promising at the beginning of the contract year, but since then, in January and February, with no precipitation or very little precipitation, we're not receiving snow up in the Sierra either. And I do have a chart here to illustrate that too. Now, all these charts, Elizabeth, are available on the Department of Water Resources website, and it's great information. These three charts represent snow accumulation, actually snow water. It's called snow water content, which is measured at different locations in the Sierra. But this top chart represents the north, the middle is the central, and the bottom is the south portion of the Sierra. Blue shade represents the average, and these other bars just represent prior years. 1982-83 was the maximum for snow water content. Now this year, this blue line here, as you can tell, starts in December. We were above average toward the end of December, and remained above average in January, even though January was a very dry month. However, we started dipping below and actually started seeing reductions in snow water content in the north. And right now, for this date, we are currently sitting at 61% of average for this date, and it looks like we're at about 52 for the year. And the maximum is measured at the beginning of April. So we're sitting closer to about 52% of the total for the year.
Given this information, do you think there's any hope for an allocation in the future?
Well, there's always hope. February will likely end up being a very disappointing month. We're 3 days away from the end of February, and but there is hope. And the reason I say that is going back to these graphs over here. If you look at the aid station index, this is another representation of the precipitation accumulation. So we started out the year October 1, the water year. Great. I mean, it looks like we were hitting some of the wettest years on record. But after the start of January, the accumulation just flattened out. And we currently sit at about 32 inches for the aid station index. Now, that's slightly below normal with this blue shade, but you can tell if we at least maintain average precipitation going forward, we could still be slightly below the average for the aid station index, so maybe below 53 inches, but it wouldn't take very much. I mean, if we follow the trajectory experienced in 2018 and 2019, we could end up above average. So I guess, yes, there is hope, but our reservoirs are so far below average that we would need a year like 2018 and 2019 to end the water year above normal, so that reclamation could fulfill some of their higher priority obligations to the exchange contractors, the settlement contractors, the refuges, and municipal and industrial customers, because they are higher priority when it comes to allocation for south of Delta ag. And we're just a lower priority. But if we get an above normal, then we hope to eke out something better than a 0% allocation. So yes, there is hope, but we need help from Mother Nature.
Well, I'll be clinging to that hope and clinging to Mother Nature. Hopefully we can get some more precipitation in these next couple of months and eke out an allocation. Thank you so much, Jose. It's been very enlightening. And to anyone watching, please feel free to send us comments or questions at our website or our various social media pages. Thank you.